So today's material is going to be a two-parter. We're going to start just with the introduction, and then we will take it one step further tomorrow. So I'm going to start with some of the setup. You're going to need your calculator again. Again, your phone will be just fine. That will work. If you have a regular calculator, obviously that will work as well. It just depends on the kind of calculator that you have. We're going to be looking for a different key today, and so I'll show you, I'll show you it on the regular calculator first. Not all calculators are the same, so you have to be careful and you have to look really closely. Above the sine, above the cosine, and above the tangent, on my calculator, it's written in little light blue letters. There's a sine -1, so if I hit the second key, and the sine key, oops, I have to turn it on apparently. So I hit the second key and the sine key. You'll see that it shows up on the screen as sine with a little -1. It almost looks like it's in a power. That's what we're going to be using today. So we're going to be using that in combination with the stuff that we have been working on, the SOHCAHTOA stuff that you did, the SOHCAHTOA song, setting up the opposite, the hypotenuse, the adjacent, all of those things. So we're going to be doing those in conjunction with each other. Now, if you use your phone, and again, it depends on the phone that you have. Oops, I gotta open this up. Don't want you all to know my password. So when I find my calculator on my phone, um, I know, like I said yesterday, some of you just have to flip your phone sideways. Mine, I have to pull this out. But I have what's called an inverse key on mine, and so sine, cosine, and tangent are there. If I want the negative ones, I hit the inverse. So yours could be the same thing. It could have an inverse. Maybe it has a second, like the calculator does, like a second. Some of them have a shift. Some of them are you're going to have to put the values in first. Some of them you're going to, you're just going to have to get used to your calculator. But let's get started on how they work. So I'm going to be working with the sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse, and I'm going to be using them to find the angle. So here's the long-winded setup. First of all, I look for what angle I'm trying to find, and I'm going to start pretty easy where I'm only going to have one to pick from. I'm trying to find this angle x. From x, I have the opposite side. This is the opposite side, and across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. The side I don't have is the adjacent. The adjacent would be the third side. I always do it the same way. I start by finding the opposite side and find the hypotenuse first, and then the one I didn't label is always the adjacent, because I always think the adjacent is the hardest one to find. So select your angle, draw across from it, that's your opposite. Find the right angle, draw across from that, that's your hypotenuse. The remaining side is the adjacent. So in this case, I have labeled the opposite and the hypotenuse, which means I'm thinking sine. So what I write is the sine of x is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Now, I'm trying to get x. That's what I'm trying to find. And so that's where my sine inverse comes into play. And so here's how I plug it in my calculator. I do the sine inverse of 14 divided by 20. And so I'll pull out my calculator. Again, I'm just going to use my phone. I got to clear this off of here. Clear. Okay. So I will do, for me, again, I had to hit the inverse. I decided because I had the opposite and the hypotenuse, I would do sine. So sine inverse. And then I do the opposite side, 14 over, oops, I've got to back that up, 14 over, I use divide by, I don't have a fraction key on my calculator, so divide by 20. It might ask me to, depending on the one you have, it might ask me to do the other parentheses. Some calculators don't, whatever yours needs to do. And so then I'm just going to figure out what angle measure this is closest to. So I would say, because it's 44.2, unlike yesterday, I'm going to use just the front two, just the whole. So I'm only going to look at the first two, and you can round or truncate. I don't care either way. It depends on if you get multiple choice or not. So I would say this is x is about 44 degrees. Okay? So here's my next one. Same thing. Again, I have my angle. This is the angle that I'm looking for. As the angle moves, where the opposite and hypotenuse and adjacent are moved. So I go directly across from that. That's the opposite. Directly across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. The remaining side is the adjacent. I have O and A, and the trig function that uses O and A is tangent. So I'll be using the tangent inverse to solve. So when I set this up, I say the tangent of the angle is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And to solve it, I hit tangent inverse of opposite divided by adjacent, and that's what I'm going to plug in my calculator. So I'll pull out my calculator again. I do tangent inverse, go back to my, and my numbers were 15 divided by 13, so 15 divided by 13, hit equals, and I'm at about 49 degrees-ish. So I say x is about 49 degrees. All right, one more. I know this video is a little longer than they usually are, but that's just sort of the setup. And I am going to, again, start it the same way. I look at my picture and I find the angle, and the angle marked here is x. So across from the angle is the opposite. I don't have that side. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. That one's given. The remaining angle is the adjacent. So where the two numbers are, I have the hypotenuse and the adjacent. And so if I go back up to my SOHCAHTOA, that one's this one. Cosine is adjacent and hypotenuse. So the cosine of the angle is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And I'm going to use the cosine inverse to solve this. So this is what I'll set in my calculator. Pull out my calculator. I'm going to go back to that on mine where it is cosine inverse. Go to my numbers. It was 30 divided by 50. And then I'm able to just hit equals on my calculator, and I got about 53. So x is about 53 degrees. I'm rounding a little bit, so again, I could use this squiggly or I could use the regular equals. It doesn't really matter that much. That's not the point of what we're doing today. So what you're going to be given is you're not going to have to find the values. You'll be given problems in this form. And so you're going to have to get comfortable with your calculator. Tomorrow, you won't have a quiz this week. Tomorrow we'll work more on getting the pictures drawn and figuring out what sides we're given and which one we're going to use. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know, and have a great day. I hope this works for you.